Hello, today we're gonna take a look at this original Xbox I picked up a while back. Looks like back in January, and it's now October. So it's been sitting in my junk pile for a little bit. I don't know if I've tested this yet. It's unopened, so let's go ahead and get this tested. Alright, we got it all plugged in. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Power's good. And it looks like it booted right into the menu. So let's press eject. Not ejecting. So we know the drive's bad. All the connections in the back look good. Let's try the controller out. Alright, so that works. We know the disk drive's bad. So let's take it apart and see what else might be wrong inside. Alright, with the power and the AV cable unplugged, we're going to flip it upside down. And then there's going to be 6 screws. There's one already exposed, and then 3 are going to be underneath these feet, and 1 there, and 1 there. So let's get started with these ones first. Now with those 6 screws removed, we can flip it back upright. And just separate the top from the bottom. So inside it looks like we have a Seagate hard drive, and I believe this is a Samsung Toshiba Samsung drive and a Seagate hard drive. Alright, so internally, looks like we have a 1.6 revision because the clock cap is over here underneath the ribbon cable, whereas in the earlier revisions it's over here and it likes to leak and cause problems. So let's keep stripping this thing down because it looks like we don't have an issue with a leaky clock capacitor. It is important to mention that this is an exposed power supply. You shouldn't touch any of the components there. They can give you quite the shock. And you should never have your console open while plugged into the wall. all of these plastic bits can go in the sink. So we know the drive is bad, it's not ejecting. So let's take it apart really quick and see what's going on inside. For this, we're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. This is a Phillips 1. There's 4 screws. And there's, I believe, 5 different variations of disk drive with the original Xbox, so these instructions might not be good for yours. Yeah, maybe I'll make a tutorial for the rest of those. So with those 4 screws removed, we should be able to lift this up and out of the way. For this model, I like to take a screwdriver, stick it right here, and slide it to the left. That allows us to eject the drive. And we can go ahead and lift the top off of the frame as well. So the drive is pretty dirty inside. There's the laser and the spindle, and here's the culprit for why it's not ejecting. It's a loose belt. So you just pry that up and off. And right now, it's pretty stiff and not very stretchy. So we'll have to replace that later. But now, that should just slide freely. Alright, for cleaning this dust out, I like to use a little paintbrush. Just knock all the dust loose. We'll come back by with an air compressor and blow it all out. Just, it'll get stuck otherwise. This helps us get into all the little nooks and crannies. Alright, now with the disk drive dusted out, there's still going to be a little bit of dust in some spots, and you just use cleaning cloth. Just get into those tight little areas. Do a wipe down. Alright, so that looks pretty dust free. I'm gonna clean the spindle really quick. And for that, I just like to put my finger down with the cloth and manually spin it like that with a Q-tip and some alcohol. This is 99%. I just reused the bottle. You're going to want to carefully get some on the tip. Not enough to soak it, but enough to get it wet. And then carefully Just let her wipe off the lens. And then with the dry end, just carefully clean that. On the back side, there's going to be the screw drive for the rail system for moving the laser back and forth. And I'm just going to use the Q-tip with the rubbing alcohol on it and clean off all of the old grease on there, because we're going to replace that with some new stuff. And you can manually screw it to move it into a different position. That's all the old grease. We'll go back through and clean that. And we can clean the rails while we're in here. Now with a little dab of white lithium grease, we're going to lubricate the screw drive again. I'm going to just let it work itself in by screwing it around. And then I'm going to wipe off some of the excess. And then just add a little bit to the rails. And slide that back and forth slowly. I also like to add a little bit to the gears here, just to kind of help this move in and out quietly. And then in a few key spots where they rub, so right here, here, there, there. You don't need a whole lot. That's just to let them slide quietly. You can work them in. Or the two spots you don't want to apply lithium grease would be this pulley and this pulley, because we need the belt to get a good grip so this can move in and out. Putting the new belt on is pretty simple. You place it over the larger pulley, and then I use a screwdriver to stretch it out and over the small pulley, and then move the drawer in and out. And it'll set it in place. With the drive maintenance done, all we have to do now is clean out the inside, again with the small cloth. Just give that a wipe down, get all the little fine dust out. Place the top cover on, flip it over, put on the bottom cover, give it a wipe down. Then we'll put those screws back in. So the drive should be good, and we'll test it once the rest of the console is assembled. The board, because you can still see there's some stuck on dirt. I'm just going to brush it really hard. For this, you should probably use a stiffer brush. Get in all the little ports on the back. We can take off the heat sinks while we're here. So you'll just pry up on that, and then you just kind of push and pull at the same time. So if you push there on the back, it will free it up right there, just enough for you to pry up and disconnect that. So with the clip removed, you should be able to just kind of wiggle that up, lift it up. And that is what it should look like. There's no internal heat spreader or integrated heat spreader, it's just the die right there. We'll need to clean off all this old heatsink compound. Then with the GPU, you kind of do the same thing. You give it a push on this side and pull up on this side. That comes off. And then this one should be stuck on a little bit more. You might need to twist it. And sometimes you just need to apply some heat. Alright, after about a minute, you should be able to twist that off, pull it up, and there's the GPU. So that's the naked stripped down board. Alright, now with the board dusted off, we could turn our attention to the thermal compound on the CPU and the GPU. With a Q-tip, get a little bit of rubbing alcohol on there. This is 99% rubbing alcohol, so it should take this off pretty easily. Alright, the top there is pretty clean. You can use a little pry tool to scrape off the edges. Just make sure you don't knock off the die. And then the thermal compound on the GPU is a little bit stickier. And rubbing alcohol doesn't always do the best job cleaning it off. Especially with the earlier varieties, they use a pink compound, which is a lot stickier. And sometimes you just have to scrape it off. Alright, so those are both nice and clean. We turn our attention to getting the stuff off the heatsink. For the CPU, you don't really need to worry about the outside square, just the center part. That's the only part that actually makes contact. I like to get everything off. You don't want to use any metal when you're scraping this because you'll damage the aluminum. You want to use plastic tools only. Alright, so that's clean. And we'll have to do the same for the GPU. Alright, with those nice and clean, we can reapply the thermal compound and get these back on. The heatsink compound I like to use is Noctua. You can use a variety of compound, but this is what I have on hand. And you don't want to go crazy. Just a little dab. I like to set down the heatsink and check the spread pattern. So that looks good. And then same with the CPU. Set that down, do it evenly. Wiggle it around to kind of spread the compound. Check on it. That looks good. We'll go ahead and put the clamps back on. Set that down in there. And then clip on this side. And then on this side, clip it down. Push that down to lock it in. And then with this one, you're going to clip it on the left side first. And then lock it in. So those are both secure. And now the board can go back into the case. For the fan, you'll want to use a paintbrush just like the other boards and just clean all the different blades and get it all knocked down, all the dust. And then I like to have a little piece of cloth, spray it with some Windex, and then just wipe down the inside. And then why you want a small piece of cloth is it'll fit right in between the blades. You can fish it through the other side. Just pull down, and it'll leave the blade nice and clean. And so I'll just do that to all of them really quick. Alright, with all that clean, I'm gonna lubricate the fan itself. And on some models, there's a sticker right here that you can peel up. Others, it's a little bit more complicated, but you'll just need to break that little seal. And then I like to use a little bit of this 3-in-1 oil. You can use a little bit thinner oil. I wouldn't use any grease, no lithium grease, no like thick oil. This is actually made for motors, and all you need is like one drop in there, and then give it a nice spin to work it in to that motor bearing, and then seal it back up. That fan should be good to go. We're going to also dust out the power supply. Again, don't touch any of the components on the bottom. And be sure to get the wires, because those will hold dust. Alright, now that the plastics are dry, we can start reassembly. Alright, we got that all reassembled. I haven't put the bottom screws in yet, just in case we need to do anything else. But let's go ahead and make sure everything turns on. First, I'm going to try to eject the drive, and that works this time. Let's go ahead and try some Tony Hawk. All right, so it looks like everything is working. I'm gonna go ahead and button it up. Before I call this done, I like to use a little bit of a showroom surface gloss to clean up the black plastic. And I just dab a little bit on a rag. It's probably too much, but it's fine. Alright, there you have it. A completed and refurbished original Xbox. Now there are still some scuffs and scratches, but that could just mean we'll have to paint this at some point.